Hello, class. This is Human Anatomy and Physiology. And we are going through the first chapter, just introducing uh, anatomy and physiology. What is anatomy? Anatomy is the form of the body. What is physiology? Very simple. Physiology is the function of the body. So we put the form and the function together, and we get what is known as anatomy and physiology. So to help us to better understand the body and the structure, its form, and it's also its function. Right. So human anatomy, study of the structure of the body. You can look at your structure and see, your hands, your teeth, your nose, your hair. Um, Physiology is how that works. How does that hand work? What do your teeth? How do your teeth work? What does your hair do? That's the function. And so we want to observe that, um, and it's a study. You see the term study, and science is about observing, measuring natural phenomena in order to explore, and explain it. And so we have studied the body, and we want to share what we do know. That's why we're taking this class, but we also want to think about things that we haven't figured out yet as well. All right, so characteristics of living organisms. Right, so we're talking about human anatomy and human physiology. So that means we're talking about a living organism. A human is a living organism. But there are other details that are important when discussing, we look, when discuss living organisms. All right, so what makes something living? That's a good question. The desk that my computer is sitting on right now is not alive, but the tree that it came from at once upon a time was alive. And so what makes something living? What makes something uh, not living, for instance? Right, so here we have one of the things that we use to qualify a living organism, and that is a cell. Cells are the basic units of life, right? Everybody's body has cells. Animals have cells. Plants are made up of cells. They can carry out the uh, functions of life. We all start off as single-celled organisms. Oops. Living organisms also have metabolism. Very simple way to look at metabolism. Metabolism is simply the chemical reactions that are necessary to keep you alive. Your body is constantly doing chemical reactions that are necessary, very necessary to keep you alive. Right now, you're breathing in oxygen. That oxygen has to combine with the hemoglobin in your red blood cells to be able to travel through your bloodstream and be delivered to the different parts of your body. That's a chemical reaction that has to happen every time you breathe in. And so we have chemical reactions that build up, and we have chemical reactions that break down uh, substances in your body. But it is very necessary for these reactions to continue to happen for you to stay alive. So living organisms are made of cells. Living organisms have metabolism. Living organisms also have growth. You may say to yourself, well, hey, I'm not growing any taller if you're over 21 years old. How do I know I'm still living? Well, you are still growing. May not be growing taller, and you may not be growing wider. But if you cut yourself, if you suffer an injury and you cut yourself, you see it bleed, and then slowly it heals. Skin grows back. And so that growth is a sign that you are alive, that you are a living organism. If I cut a part of this desk off, it will not grow back. I'd have to, cut a piece of wood somewhere else and put it there, but it would not grow back on its own. It is not a living organism. Living organisms also have the ability to excrete. You sweat if it's hot outside. Um, we also can obviously go to the bathroom and eliminate waste from our urinary system and our digestive systems. And so that's part of of us being living organisms. We also have the ability to respond to stimuli. If it's hot in here, for instance, I'll sweat, but also if it's cold, I might get goosebumps. And so we have the ability to respond. This desk, as an example, that my computer is sitting on right now, this desk does not respond, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, it's the same. Movement is also a sign of a living organism. Um, and we don't always see movement, but for instance, as a human being, I can move very freely. We can see that I am a living organism. But something like a tree, you may not see the movement necessarily. You might see the wind blowing, the leaves and things like that, but there is movement inside that tree. When it rains, water soaks into the ground and then it moves into the roots and then eventually up into the rest of the tree. So there's that movement inside that tree that happens even though you cannot see it. Reproduction, another characteristic of living organisms. So being made up of cells, having metabolism, movement, being able to respond to the environment. All of these are characteristics of living organisms and the ability to reproduce. Obviously, the desk that I'm working on, it cannot reproduce, but I can reproduce and you can reproduce, and plants and animals, cells and bacteria, and it can all reproduce. So the body is organized in different ways. We've established now that we are a living organism. The human body is what we're studying in this class. But if we look at the body from the smallest uh, way to look at it to the largest way to look at it, it is very organized. The first level that we look at is the chemical level, right? So the different um, atoms that make up the different parts of our body. We see carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Everybody knows H2O, water, hydrogen, two hydrogen atoms and one bound to one oxygen atom, H2O, makes up our bodies. The next level is the cellular level, which we've already talked about. Now, the chemical level, if we look at the hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen that we saw before, that's not technically considered alive, but it's necessary to build the next level, which is the level of the cell, the cellular level. So the atomic level, if I have oxygen floating around in the air, it's not considered alive. It's not a living organism, but it helps make living organisms. And the cell is made up of uh, a chemical structure that is considered to be alive. Cell, the smallest unit of life, able to carry out all the necessary functions. And so that's the next level, cellular level. After that level, we have a tissue level. So now we have multiple cells that are working together for a specific function. That makes up what we call in the body a tissue, right? Muscles are tissues. Skin technically is an organ, but it is made up of layers of tissues. After the tissue level, we have the organ level. Two or more tissue types combine to form what is called an organ. Think of your heart. Your heart is made up of nervous tissue. It has nerves that send signals to tell it to contract. Your heart has muscular tissue. It has to be able to beat. It has muscular tissue. It also has this thing called epithelial tissue, which covers and protects the heart. After that, we get to the level of organization known as the organ system. And so here we have multiple organs working together to carry out specific functions. So your ability to be able to breathe requires your mouth or your nose, both of them can be used. Nose is an organ, mouth is an organ. Now your mouth or your nose, your tongue can be used. Your trachea sends air down to your bronchioles, eventually to your left and your right lungs. All of those are organs that are working together to allow you to be able to breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. You put all of the organ systems together, the pulmonary system, which allows us to breathe, the cardiovascular system, which allows us to be able to transport blood, the muscular system, which allows us to move, the skeletal system, which allows us to stand and to have support and protection, the digestive system, which allows us to take in nutrients, the urinary system, which allows us to remove metabolic waste, the nervous system, which controls a lot of the body, the endocrine system, which controls the body through hormones. You put all of the systems together, and that makes up what is called an organism, right? And so, combination of the different organ systems make up altogether what is called an organism, right? And so that those are the levels of organization. And we are very organized. That is the beauty of humanity, but also of this world. We are very organized. The human body has 11 organ systems that work together to make up what is known as the human organism. First system is the skin, your integumentary system, depending on how you like to pronounce it. It protects you. It keeps certain things from going into the body, but also keeps certain things from going out of the body. If you notice, if you cut your skin, you bleed. So it helps keep blood from going out of the body. But also, if you jump in the ocean, water doesn't just rush into your body. There's a barrier there known as skin, which keeps your body from flooding with water. Your skeletal system helps protect you. Things like your brain, things like your vital organs are protected by your skeletal system. Also helps us with support. The reason that you can stand up, one of the reasons you can stand up is your skeletal system working in conjunction with your muscular system. Your muscular system allows you to be able to move and also generate energy and heat. Your nervous system is one of the ways your body can control. I think, therefore, my brain can send a signal to my hand and allows me to move. I also can sense the world. I touch something, my brain can interpret that information and tell me what I'm touching. Your endocrine system also helps control the body a little bit differently than the nervous system, but a lot of things are controlled through your hormones. The fact that I'm 6 foot tall is primarily due to my hormones, the hormones in my body that cause me to grow to this height. Cardiovascular system allows for your body to be able to pump blood throughout your body. That blood carries nutrients, that blood carries oxygen, that blood also carries carbon dioxide and waste. Your lymphatic system allows your bloodstream to be cleaned. Respiratory system allows you to breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Oxygen is necessary for your body to function, and your body has to be able to get rid of carbon dioxide for your body to function. Digestive system allows you to bring in nutrients that your body can use and transfer. It transfers those nutrients ultimately to your bloodstream. Urinary system allows you to remove metabolic waste from your body and also help maintain Homeostasis, reproductive system allows you to be able to reproduce, to make offspring. So anatomy and physiology has its own language, and we start off with anatomical position. Anatomical position is just body standing straight up, palms forward, gazes forward, feet shoulder width apart, hands at your side. This is anatomical position, and it's important because this is our reference point, and this is the point we're always going to use in anatomy and physiology. So we have directional terms based on that body position. Right? So the front, we call it anterior, towards the front, posterior, towards the back. So towards the front of my body, anterior, towards the back, I'm going that way, posterior. Superior, towards the head, inferior, towards the feet. Proximal. So if I have my arm out and I'm talking about my shoulder, proximal will be closer to the point of origin. So moving closer to my shoulder. Distal will be moving away from my shoulder. We also use an imaginary midline. So imaginary midline down the middle of the body. And we say medial is towards that midline. Lateral is away from that midline. Superficial is a term we also use. Sort of very similar to how we use it as a layman term. But superficial means towards the surface, and then deep means further away from that surface. And you can look at this chart here and see some of those directional terms. We also have regional terms. The body can be divided into two regions: axial, head, neck, and trunk, axial, and then appendicular, your appendages are your arms and your legs. And so we can look at the body that way too. And then as you see here, there are other ways we can divide the different regions of the body and get really specific into the different regions of the body, different regional terms. And you'll see some of these terms are definitely related to some of the muscles and the bones in those areas. There are also planes that we talk about. And if you've ever done any type of imaging, MRI, CT scans, or any of that kind of stuff, X-rays, you've probably been exposed to this, whether you knew it or not, or if you work in that field. But sagittal plane divides the body into the right and left. So sagittal plane would go down that midline that we talked about before. So that's a sagittal plane. If you looked at the body on a sagittal plane, and here in the picture we have a mid-sagittal, so right on the midline, mid-sagittal section of the brain, and that's the image that you would get. Frontal plane divides the body into anterior and posterior, so right this way, and then transverse divides the body this way. So three planes. You have sagittal, frontal or coronal. Frontal or coronal, and then transverse. Okay. So transverse divides the body into top and bottom, frontal into forward, into anterior and posterior, and then sagittal into left and right. Right. So if we looked at the brain on a frontal section, frontal image, you notice if it looks a little bit different than if we did it sagittally, frontal, and then there's a transverse look at the brain. Right, a little bit more about the organization of the human body. Right, so body cavities, fluid-filled space within the body. Cavity, fluid-filled space within the body. There are major cavities, posterior, anterior cavities, and their subdivisions. Right, so we have cranial, here, but the cranial cavity, We have that. We have that's within the skull, protects the brain. There's also a vertebral cavity. You think of your spinal cord and that it's in your vertebral cavities, protecting your spinal cord. Both of those cavities are filled with cerebral spinal fluid, which bathes your brain and spinal cord in this fluid that allows for it to stay uh, nice and moist and not get injured. And then you have thoracic cavities and abdominal pelvic cavity, right? Thoracic cavities, we're going to have our heart and lungs, abdominal pelvic cavity. Some of your other major organs will be in that area. Oops. And then it gets more specific with some other, looking at the heart, specifically at the heart and the lungs and the pericardial cavity. You don't have to know all of those. Right? So this is just showing you that image there. And then we can divide the body also into quadrants. Also something that you don't have to pay super close attention to. But there are ways that they divide the body into different quadrants to get specific when they're talking about different layers of the body or different parts of the body. There's also membranes, other ways to look at how the body is divided and how the body is organized. Membranes are thin sheets of tissue. They form cavities and form cavities around the heart, lungs, and abdominal organs. And so it's like, think of like, uh, so let's say this is the organ. And I take this piece of paper, fold it on itself, and wrap it around this organ. That would form the membrane. That's kind of like how the membranes are. And so we have the visceral layer, which is in contact with the underlying organ, and then we have a parietal layer, which is on the outside. And in between the inside and outside layer of that membrane, we have what is called serous fluid, which again helps protect those organs that have this membrane around it, and prevents friction, keeps you safe and sound. And so if you look at the image of this heart here, you see this serous membrane that is around the heart. Obviously, we want to keep the heart nice and safe. And so you'll see this around numerous organs. So when you're doing things like surgery, and not that you're going to be doing surgery, but when you're doing things like surgery, you have to cut through these uh, membranes that are protecting the different organs that you may need to reach. And so one of the things that they try to do is prevent the disruption of these membranes as much as possible, because obviously if I cut through it, I have I have created another problem. And so, you'll have these minimally invasive surgical procedures to try to minimize the damage to things like the membranes, because we want those membranes to be there to continue to protect. All right, so around the pleural membrane, with the pleural membrane, that's going to be the one that runs along the lungs. Pericardial membrane, uh, that's going to be the one that protects the heart. Peritoneal membranes, that's going to be on some of your abdominal organs. And so you'll see these different membranes which protect the different organs. And then we have, I mentioned medical imaging, looking at the different planes and different ways the body is organized. Medical imaging is a huge uh, science. If we can see something without introducing any type of injury to the body, without poking you or sticking a needle in you, or cutting you open, if we can see what's inside of you, that's powerful. And so knowing how the body is organized is obviously very important, because if you're having an issue, okay, if I know where the lungs are, the heart is, the stomach, the intestine, the gallbladder. If I know where those are and you're pointing to pain or some type of issue, I know what's in, first of all, I want to know what's in that area already. So, science, we've studied those things, but also I have the imaging at my disposal so that, hey, you've described some issue that you're having with some part of your body. Let me image it. And that's a lot of times what doctors will do. They'll order you to have an x ray or an MRI or something like that so that they can have a look at what's inside without actually cutting you or probing you. Um, because anytime that I cut you or stick a needle or anything, even the smallest, I'm introducing some damage to your body. I'm altering things, even if it's just slightly. And so imaging technology can be very useful to be able to see where the problem is without actually going inside the body. Thank you for listening. That is the end of our first section, first chapter together.